Of Arirang News, I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. In a blaze of tweets, US President Donald Trump warns of bigger-than-ever war games if North Korea talks break down. He also says it's China's fault that the denuclearization process has stalled. The rain keeps on coming. More homes and stores are flooded as the central region is lashed by more torrential downpours. The bad news, more is expected today. Plus, South Korea sets up an Asian Games men's football final with its arch-rival Japan. After beating Vietnam in the semi-final, the big one kicks off on Saturday evening. So let's start with the shaky state of Pyongyang-Washington ties. Could there be another reason behind the current stalemate in negotiations between the United States and North Korea? While many are pointing an accusing finger at Pyongyang for dragging its feet on denuclearization, a US media outlet reports that President Trump may have made Kim Jong-un a big promise of his own during the Singapore summit, one he has yet to keep. Lee Ji-won starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump reportedly promised North Korean leader Kim Jong-un that he would end the Korean War during their historic summit in Singapore back in June. U.S. media outlet Fox, citing multiple sources familiar with the negotiations, reported Wednesday that President Trump told Kim that he would sign a declaration to end the war soon after their summit. But since then, the U.S. has been repeatedly urging North Korea to take more concrete actions for its denuclearization, more specifically handing over 60 to 70% of its nuclear warheads within 6 to 8 months. Fox says this is likely what brought about the deadlock and the increasingly hostile response from the North. One of the sources told Fox that President Trump, having promised a peace declaration, but then making it conditional, would seem as though Washington is reneging on its commitments, and it makes sense why the North Koreans are angry. While the White House declined to comment, State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said she's not familiar with that being part of the overall agreement, but once again reiterated the U.S. believes denuclearization has to take place before anything else. Despite the skepticism and doubt, likely aggravated by President Trump's cancellation of his Secretary of State's visit to Pyongyang, the president once again reiterated that he's on good terms with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Speaking at the White House on Wednesday, President Trump said the U.S. is doing very well with North Korea. But he pointed to China as one of the reasons for the current stalemate with the North.
China is the route to North Korea. 93% of the product and various things that go into North Korea go in through China. And I think that China makes it much more difficult in terms of our relationship with North Korea. Now,
President Trump praised Chinese President Xi Jinping and China in general, but said that with the U.S. losing hundreds of billions of dollars a year to China, he had to straighten out their lopsided trade relationship. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, President Trump says there's no reason to be spending large sums of money on the joint South Korea-US war games. Trump made the statement on his Twitter account a few hours ago. The statement says President Trump believes his relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is a very good and warm one, but it stressed the president can instantly start the joint military exercises again with South Korea and Japan, and if he does, the exercises will be far bigger than ever before. The statement also criticized China for not pressuring the North enough into the path of denuclearization. And US Secretary of Defense James Mattis says plans for next year's full legal exercise with South Korea are not cancelled yet, adding to his previous remarks, hinting at a possible resumption of the joint military exercises. Speaking to reporters after a meeting with his Indonesian counterpart, Mattis said the full legal military exercise planned for next March hasn't been called off and may resume pending negotiations with North Korea. Full legal is the first of 4 joint military exercises that take place between South Korea and the US every year. So, with the stalling diplomacy between the US and North Korea, some in South Korea are questioning whether President Moon Jae-in should go ahead with his planned September summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang. However, there's also the view that the current situation makes it even more important that the summit go ahead. Kim Mo-kyun with the details.
South Korea's foreign and unification ministers say the South Korean government needs to prepare for and go ahead with the upcoming inter-Korean summit so it can contribute to denuclearization. At a parliamentary hearing of the Budget Committee on Wednesday, Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa said that with progress towards denuclearization seeming to slow down, President Moon Jae-in's visit to Pyongyang for talks in September could play a big role.
With no apparent progress on North Korea's denuclearization, the burden on South Korea is big. If things aren't going so well for the North and the US, then the South Korean president absolutely has a role.
She noted that the lack of notable developments in the North's disarmament was the reason U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo abruptly canceled his trip there. But she added that Pyongyang and Washington still have momentum for dialogue. When the questions turned to Unification Minister Cho Myung-kyun, Cho agreed with the foreign minister, saying it's now all the more crucial for President Moon to go to Pyongyang.
Now that Pompeo's trip is cancelled, September's inter-Korean talks are even more important for denuclearization.
He said that just like how the two Korean leaders made a breakthrough at their talks in May, at a time when Washington had cancelled its scheduled summit with North Korea, the next Moon-Kim summit could also get things moving again. Asked whether Washington agreed with an inter-Korean summit taking place next month, the foreign minister said that since the summit was agreed to in the Panmunjom Declaration, the United States will fully understand. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Let's shift gears a touch now. Torrential downpours continued through Wednesday night here in South Korea, causing damage to homes, stores and streets. With more than 70 millimetres of rain falling per hour in some parts of the country, hundreds of homes were inundated with flood water. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
Heavy downpours that continued for a second day on Wednesday dumped over 400 millimeters of rain on parts of the country. During the most intense hour of rainfall on Wednesday, more than 70 millimeters fell in the capital city and the surrounding Gyeonggi-do Province. The flooding caused by the heavy rainfall damaged homes, stores, and streets. According to the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters, over 1,400 homes and stores were flooded in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do Province, while over 140 flood victims had to stay overnight at community centers. The rain also flooded streets, washing away vehicles. A dozen flights were also canceled on Wednesday. Authorities blocked major expressways and issued landslide warnings in Seoul, Gyeonggi-do, and Gangwon-do provinces. The Ministry of the Interior and Safety has warned regional authorities to stay alert to respond swiftly as more heavy rain is forecast on Thursday. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now let's get a further check on the weather from our Lee Ji-hyun, who's standing by at the Weather Centre. Ji-hyun, as our Hyo-sun just mentioned in her report, some parts of the country received over 400 millimetres of rain within the past 48 hours, and we hear there's more to come.
Right, Mark, and hello again. In fact, Goyang in Gyeonggi-do Province saw over 500 millimeters of showers, and Dobong District in Seoul nearly 490, causing floods across the upper regions. And the central and southern regions will see rainfall picking up in the afternoon until late at night, and especially those in Chungcheong-do and Jeolla-do Provinces will see heavy rainfall until dawn on Friday, and Seoul will see light rainfall at around midnight. And rain could fall at a rate of 40 millimeters an hour in those two provinces, which is Chungcheong-do and Jeolla-do Provinces, with up to 150 millimeters of rainfall expected until Friday, so be prepared. And daily highs will range in the upper 20s to low 30s in most parts. Seoul and Busan will get up to 29 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Meanwhile, Jeju will be hot and mostly sunny with a heat wave advisory in place for Thursday. And that's the weather update for now.
President Moon Jae-in will meet this morning with the heads of 17 provincial and city governments to craft new job creation plans. The top office says the local government heads will present the president with their employment stimulus plans and ideas on improving the economy. The president will offer suggestions on how the government can support their plans. The meeting is the first of its kind since the local government heads won their seats in the June local elections. It comes amid calls for stronger job creation measures following the release of some grim employment data. Arirang TV, the TV station you're watching right now, will be broadcasting the meeting from 11 a.m. Korea time with English translation. So stay with us if you want to see what your local representative has planned. The South Korean government will keep close tabs on the country's real estate market and has vowed stronger action against any signs of speculation. The government agreed to this in a high-level meeting with the presidential office and members of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea on Thursday, ahead of next week's regular parliamentary session. The groups also agreed to take preemptive measures to curb consumer prices ahead of the Chuseok holiday next month and provide financial support for the self-employed and small business owners during that period. They also plan to hold such high-level meetings once a month and hold closed-door meetings every week. Pessimism levels among South Korean firms reached a point not seen in a year and a half in August. The central bank says local firms are worried about Washington's new import restrictions, among other things. Go Ryun-hee reports.
South Korea's overall business sentiment this month marked its lowest point since February last year, mainly due to concerns over import restrictions by the U.S. and low consumer sentiment. According to the Bank of Korea on Thursday, the business survey index marked 74 in August, down 1 point from the previous month. A reading below 100 means there are more pessimists than optimists on the local economy. Breaking it down by industry, confidence among metal manufacturers slumped by 5 points in August from the previous month. The central bank attributed the fall to U.S. restrictions on imports of South Korean steel. In April, Washington confirmed that Seoul would be granted an exemption from steel tariffs, but set the import quota for South Korean steel at 70% of Korea's average exports from 2015 to 2017. BSI among wholesale and retail businesses also fell by 4 points during the same period, due to low consumer sentiment. The sentiment forecast for next month is looking grim as well. The Korea Economic Research Institute's report shows the business survey index outlook for September marked 92.2, down 2.2 from the same period last year. The institute attributed the fall to the ongoing tariff spat between the world's two largest economies, as well as low domestic demand in Korea. The BSI outlook is low, despite the expected increased demand during the country's Chuseok holiday next month. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
Now, small business owners here in South Korea have vowed to respond to the very high minimum wage hike. They gathered in Seoul on Wednesday, demanding changes as their finances are being hit extremely hard by the government's move. Kim Hae-sung with the details.
Even the heavy rain can't deter them. More than 30,000 people from about 150 different associations, including the Korea Federation of Micro Enterprise, staged a protest in central Seoul. Small business owners and the self-employed from across the country gathered Tuesday in Gwanghwamun Square, demanding changes to the government's minimum wage hike. The Moon administration raised the minimum wage by over 16% this year and has decided to raise it by another 10.9% next year. That would bring it to about $7.50. The protest came despite the government's announcement last week of support for small business owners hit by the wage hike, including a cut in credit card service charges and an increase in subsidies.
The government's support measures are just a quick fix and are far from realistic. Regarding subsidies, only those who have insurance can apply, meaning only about a third of the self-employed can actually get them. This requirement should be changed.
According to the OECD, about 5.7 million, or 1 in 5 Koreans, are self-employed. Data from the Bank of Korea show loans to the self-employed in retail, wholesale, restaurants, and lodging hit $172 billion in the second quarter this year, marking the biggest on-quarter jump since 2008. The number of jobs added in July also plunged to 5,000 compared to a monthly average last year of 300,000.
Sales haven't changed, but labor costs have shot up due to higher wages. Profits plunged about 30% compared to the same period last year. Raising the minimum wage to improve quality of life is good, but all that burden is on us, small business owners.
Protesters demanded changes such as applying different wage rates to different sectors and detailed measures about how the government provides subsidies to small businesses with fewer than 5 people. But the government has already laid out support measures, including more fiscal spending for the lower income brackets, so it remains to be seen whether those demands will be met. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Let's give you the latest from Jakarta and Palembang, the host cities for the 2018 Asian Games. Now, South Korea is likely to fall short of its bid to finish second in the medal table, standing more than 10 golds behind second-place Japan, with just a few days of action to go. But on Wednesday night, most of the focus was on the football pitch as South Korea took on Vietnam in the semi-final. Won Jung-hwan with more.
South Korea secured a spot in the Asian Games men's football final on Wednesday evening with a 3-1 win over Vietnam. Lee Seung-woo scored twice, and the country's new goal machine Hwang Hee-jo hit the back of the net again, bringing his goal tally in Indonesia to 9. The victory means Vietnam, led by South Korean-born head coach Park Hang-seo, will play for the bronze medal against the UAE. The semi-final results set up a dream final between two arch-rivals, South Korea and Japan. The final kicks off on Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Korea time. Meanwhile, on the first day of the judo competition, South Korea won medals in all 4 weight categories. Jung Bo-kyung got the ball rolling by winning the first judo final in Jakarta, capturing the women's under 48 kilogram title over Ami Kondo of Japan. Lee Ha-rim and Park Da-sol followed it up by grabbing a bronze and a silver medal respectively in their categories. Then An Baul put the finishing touch on the day by winning gold in the men's under 66 kilogram category. With 3 days of judo remaining, South Korea is expected to surpass the 5 gold medals it won in the discipline in Incheon 4 years ago. Golden news also came from cycling. Park Sang-un was crowned the men's individual pursuit champion. Park did it in style, setting a new Asian record in the qualifying stage before clinching the gold by overlapping his opponent in the final with 4 laps remaining in the 16-lap race. Over in the co-host city of Palembang, Kim Jin-woong won the men's singles title in soft tennis. Kim defeated teammate Kim Dong-un in the semi-final and then overcame his Indonesian opponent in the final. In paragliding, South Korea topped the women's team cross-country track 5 event to claim their first gold medal over Japan. Paragliding became an official medal sport for the first time at this year's Asian Games. So far, South Korea has collected 5 medals in the sport. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
Congratulations to all those gold medal winners on Wednesday. Now, we're going to keep our focus on the football taking place at the Asian Games. As we just heard from our Won Jung-hwan there, the stage is now set for a truly mouth-watering final between South Korea and Japan. Vietnam, led by their South Korean head coach, they still have a chance to wrap themselves in glory as well if they can win their 3rd place playoff and get the bronze medal. Lee Seung-jae reports.
In a battle between the tournament's highest-scoring team versus the best defensive team, offense came out on top on Wednesday, with South Korea beating Vietnam 3-1 without overstretching themselves. The game also brought more goals for informed strikers Lee Seung-woo and Hwang Hee-jo, who has scored 9 times in 6 matches so far. On the other side of the draw, Japan edged past the UAE 1-0, setting up a gold medal match on Saturday evening between South Korea and Japan. A win would give South Korea their 5th Asian Games gold in men's football. Japan have only ever won gold once before. Come Saturday, everything is on the line, especially for Tottenham Hotspur striker Son Heung-min. This year's Asian Games is the last chance for the South Korean captain to earn a military exemption, as a gold medal finish would grant him just that. And while Son has scored just once in this year's tournament, he set up a number of goals, proving a crucial wildcard pick for head coach Kim Hak-bum. And while head coach Park Hang-seo and his Vietnamese national team's Cinderella story came to an end on Wednesday, the nation still has a chance at winning their first ever bronze medal in the event. Park, who's a national hero in the Southeast Asian nation, apologized after the loss, but was met with millions of online comments from Vietnamese fans who praised him and the team for their efforts. Vietnam will play the UAE on Saturday for the bronze medal. So, the stage is set for an exciting day of football. Will South Korea win their second straight men's football gold at the Asian Games? Will the magician Park Hang-seo bring Vietnam its first football bronze? Fans in South Korea and Vietnam will be counting down the minutes. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News. Now, Argentina's government has asked the IMF for the early release of a multi-billion-dollar loan as an economic crisis continues to grip the nation. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Noah Adam. Adam, things are really not looking good in Argentina.
That's right, Mark. The country's economy has been on a downward spiral since early this year when Argentina asked for the first installment of the $50 billion credit line. At that time, Buenos Aires tried to dispel fears that it was seeking an emergency rescue due to an imminent debt default, saying it was instead to help with a massive devaluation of its currency. But the peso has continued to drop and inflation has also been rampant, triggering a more desperate response from the government. President Mauricio Macri told a televised address on Wednesday that the request for speedy disbursements was aimed at calming turbulent markets.
I want to announce that we have agreed with the International Monetary Fund to advance all the necessary funds to guarantee compliance with the financial program next year. This decision aims to eliminate any uncertainty that might have arisen around the worsening of the international context.
After the announcement, the peso fell even further, marking its biggest one-day decline since 2015. The currency has lost more than 45% of its value against the greenback so far this year, which has prompted Argentina's central bank to sell $500 million in reserves just this week. President Trump has announced that White House counsel Don McGahn will be leaving his post in the coming weeks. The pair's relationship has been strained amid reports that McGahn had been cooperating extensively with special counsel Robert Mueller's probe into alleged Russian election meddling. McGahn's departure would mark the latest in a series of high-ranking advisors to leave the president's side. As White House counsel, McGahn played a key role in Trump's efforts to revamp the federal judiciary with relatively young conservative justices. Trump said McGahn is slated to leave after the confirmation of Supreme Court nominee Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says a deal on the North American Free Trade Agreement could be reached ahead of his US counterpart's Friday deadline. His comments on Wednesday came as trade officials from the two countries resumed talks on NAFTA.
We recognize that there is a possibility of getting there by Friday, but it is only a possibility because it will hinge on whether or not there is ultimately a good deal for Canada, a good deal for Canadians. I've said from the very beginning, no NAFTA deal is better than a bad NAFTA deal.
The negotiations came after the US and Mexico made a tentative trade deal which President Trump threatened to make only bilateral if Canada was not on board with the revised trade terms.
Well, that's pretty much all we have for now. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. And just a reminder that at the top of the hour, we will have live coverage of the big meeting on job creation between President Moon Jae-in and 17 heads of provincial and city governments. Solving the jobless crisis is one of the top priorities of this administration, of course. So do stay with us for that. We also have our newscast coming up at noon as normal with our EG Yoon. So until then, goodbye.